hit the wrong button. Hey guys, welcome to a live show that's going to be with Alex and I. Hopefully you guys can hear and see me. So if you can, give me a big thumbs up. And I'm going to go ahead and pull Alex in if this works. Hey Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you the whole time.
All right, guys. And hopefully you guys can see him. Let me just double check on the comments. We got a couple of people here already. So tonight we wanted, or today, not tonight, we wanted to chat a little bit about family court and the problems of fighting and some of the things that you need to understand. And I made a video about this earlier that I dropped. It's just kind of the driver of this. But I know that a lot of people struggle with this. But let me double check if I can do a couple of things. Okay, all right. I'm just playing around. Okay, so Alex, I'm going to throw it over to you so you can say a little bit about yourself, tell them about your channel so they know how to find you, and then we'll dive into it.
So when I explain myself to your viewers, I typically contrast my approach where Duane focuses on the self-help and the sort of outside the courtroom mentality. My channel focuses entirely on what goes on, what to do, and how to deal with the conflict inside the courtroom. And it's, for the most part, a self-help legal channel. So we're talking understanding motions, hearings, trials, procedure, court rules, statutes, stuff like that. And most of my experience comes from my representing myself for 8 years in a high conflict child custody case, which included 4 victories in the Supreme Court of Nevada and 1 publication on a writ petition, which is another type of appeal. It's a different name, a little bit more complicated, but I was also published on that. So that's where that's pretty much
Alex here with part 1 of the My Docket series.
I told people
I got this dollar sign right here in the front. That represents.
I'm hitting. I have something playing in the background. So so that's who Alex is. If you guys do not know of him, you definitely, let me try to pull this over. You need to check out his channel. It's The Proper Person over on YouTube, and Our Nevada Judges for his other site. So, whoops, wrong button. So anyways, hey, so Alex, here's the situation that happened the other day. I was perusing Facebook, and I ran across a comment or a post that Chris Gaudiz from We Need to Chat posted. I'm trying to move this screen. I don't know why it's in my way. Oh, there it goes. And one of the and the story on it was this. It was basically an individual had custody of got custody of his son at 16. Mom hadn't been paying, and then when the boys started going to college, he decided, hey, she needs to pay a little bit. Let's go back to court, and all hell broke loose. Basically, she fought everything. She obviously hired an attorney. When she lost, she appealed it. And then she just kept filing more and more things, one after another, ultimately just making everyone's life a living hell. And one of the things that caught me on this is that, you got to really pick your battles, right? Sometimes you need to fight. Sometimes it's important to actually fight what you're trying to do. And other times, you really have to look at the cost on what's going on and decide if it's really worth it. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, there's a problem with that. The problem with that is the high conflict X will I guess you could call it metagaming. They will figure out that you're trying to avoid litigation because you're trying to pick and choose your fights, and so they'll find ways to nitpick. But if you're just dealing with a situation where it's just 2 people who get along for the most part, and you're asking the question in the context of there is no conflict, so why start any? I suppose you're right about that, especially when it comes to a situation that it sounds like there wasn't really much going on up until the child went to college. It does sound to me like that might be something that I wouldn't have even bothered to do.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and I get what you're saying, right? I mean, if everything's fine, and it's not high conflict, then you typically you can just work it out. But if you have a situation where it's been not exposed, but shown, I mean, from experience, it's high conflict. Like in this, so my thought on this situation is you got this individual that everything's basically calm. Mom's pretty much out of the picture, and to basically, and I get it, right? To basically think, well, crap, I'm doing all this. I mean, she should pay, and you mash the button to try to get something to change. And then, it's like you open Pandora's box. Oftentimes I think that if everything is basically calm and stable and you're doing pretty good, don't even push it. Right? I mean, it's like what is the ultimate goal? I don't know how many times I've seen people say, I'm pissed off that the ex is gallivanting around and going on trips and having all kinds of fun and looking at it, they're paying $100 in child support and it really should be $200, and I took him back to court, and then frickin' all hell broke loose. Now the person is going for full custody. They're questioning, the other parent's parenting style, calling CPS. I mean, just doing everything to pull out the stops. And their life basically went from stable and just being irritated at the person to now being this catastrophic Charlie Foxtrot that, it's like, what the hell did you even do? And what's the point, I mean, I know in your situation, you had to fight. And I know, in the beginning stages, you have to fight for what's really important. But I think oftentimes people lose sight of what really is important. I mean, what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I suppose in this case it makes sense because you've got a parent who wants their child to go to college, and they want to just share that burden. It's just, I think it's tough for me because I actually don't believe in those statutes, the ones that can be used to force an ex to pay for college. So it's really getting in the way of me sort of giving you some honest feedback on it, because if the law entitles them to it and it's good for the kid, that's one thing. But I have a really strong personal objection to
and I hear what you're saying, and it's like, and you make a good point though, because if it's one of those things where if you can do it, it still doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. Right? You really have to decide what is really important. But I said, okay, so let me throw this other scenario out there that makes a little bit more sense. Let's say, and I kind of briefly hit over it, but let's hit this one. Let's say you have a 10 to 15 or whatever, a minor child that's not getting ready to age out of the system, and you've already got a court order. It's set up to where the person's paying. When it was set up, 5 years before, child support was $100 a month, and now you're looking at it, and your ex isn't involved. So keep in mind, the ex isn't involved. They're not really taking their doing their visitation, and you look at it and you're like, damn it, I know they're making more money. You go to the calculator, you look at it, and you can see that it's that they would owe $200. Or let's even jump it up and say, with the new adjusted child support, all the numbers, it looks like the court would award you $200 more a month. Is it worth it to go battle a narcissistic, toxic ex for a couple $100 a month? What's your opinion on that?
My personal opinion on that is that it is worth it unless they are giving you some kind of slack in some other area. And it just comes down to child support being formulaic. So once you removed school from the equation, it really is just a formula. And if somebody is sincerely got narcissistic personality disorder and they're high conflict, then they're going to find a way to create conflict anyway. So even if something is peaceful now, it won't last long. So, and I mean, there were some situations in my case where there were, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 months of peace. And if something needed taking, if I had to take something to court to get it resolved, I would never think to myself, am I going to make her go crazy? Because all you'd end up doing then is sort of getting trained into taking actions and making decisions based on what you think the other person's going to do rather than what's in the best interest of the child. So the compass should be the best interest of the child, and you should never really stand back or avoid a conflict just because you're afraid of what they're going to do, because they'll sense that. Go ahead.
Now, I have a different opinion. I have a different opinion on that, and partly it's. I mean, I get what you're saying from a structural perspective. What is right, but it's like, what's the cost, right? I mean, we've had this discussion about my situation about going back and having child support adjusted or trying to get her wages imputed. Well, now she's working, but it's like one of those things where I haven't done it because I don't want to deal with the shit show that's going to come from it, and every time that I, try to do something or try to hold her accountable, it causes more pain for me and ultimately the kids. And in this last scenario, which I did mention on the video that I posted earlier today, I had sent an email basically saying, hey, you're working now, let's adjust child support. And what happened is it's not that I got attacked, but now my youngest daughter is being triangulated against. So I've had this really great relationship with my 14-year-old, and now all of a sudden everything's going to crap. And it's like, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, is it really worth it? I mean, is it really worth the cost? Now, money wise, yeah, sure. I mean, I could probably get $300 or $400 back a month getting her wages imputed, and that would be very helpful. But is it worth the cost of the peace and the successes that I've made with my kids just to fight that? You know what I mean?
So I have two answers there. The first one I'm going to say is this. That happened in my case a lot. She would go ballistic when I would take some kind of action in court. But what I would do is just take her back to court again. That's one of the things that was different about me. And that's one of the approaches that works with these types of individuals. You can't just go to court and then just stay away from it because things get crazy. I call it the cycle of revenge. When they go into the cycle of revenge because they're mad that you've done something to them in the court system, the response is to take all of the things they're doing now that are insane and take them back again. And I ended up taking her back. Well, that's what I had to do. Because he needed certain things. And so she wouldn't provide them. So I sued. And then she got angry and got vengeful and started to get crazier. So what did I do? I took all the crazier stuff she did, took her back to court again. And it took her back by 3 or 4 times. Each time she got more angry and wanted more revenge. And each time the court took another thing away from her. So she lost physical custody, then she lost legal custody, then she was banned from appointments, then she was removed. And eventually they terminated her parental rights.
But I think the difference is what you're talking about is, I mean, you had a real issue to fight. I mean, this was a medical issue related to your son, the dental stuff. I mean, so you really, and actually I'm glad you brought that up, because that really is to me is a really good example where you don't have any choice. There's a problem that you have to deal with, and you're backed against a corner. I mean, all of us try to rationalize or reason with our exes, and that's one of those things that just is impossible. But I think it's a different scenario. I mean, it's like, but let me ask you this. If you would have had full custody and she had visitation and she was just a nuisance, but you were able to take care of all the medical issues and all that, I mean, everything else, there would have been no reason for you to take her back to court.
Yeah, that's what I was about to get into. There are a list of things I call small issues that I would set them aside and wait for something big to blow up. And then I would lump all the small stuff into it. So I guess $100 kind of does count like a small thing. And so that would have been something that, in fact, I do believe I did that a few times. There was one occasion where my child support was $75 a month, and I could have raised it to.
Oh no, I lost you.
Oh, I'm still here.
Your audio dropped out for a minute. What were you saying? You said you had an opportunity to raise it to
to $330 from $75, and at the time I had already been getting a lot of what I wanted, so I got joint physical custody and overnights. So I just kind of set that aside, and then eventually she pulled a stunt. I had to go pick him up, and I was a single minute late. I'm not exaggerating. Literally 1 minute, not 2, 1 single minute. So I showed up at 3:01, 1 whole minute, and she left. So I sued her for that, filed like a show cause motion, and then I lumped in all the other small stuff, including the child support. And so she actually avoided the contempt charge, but the child support went up. So the judge said, it's just a minute, don't do that again. And your child support's going up. So he raised it from 75 to 330. So,
here's a question. I'm going to pull up a question that Deanne had. It might pop up on the screen. It says, good question. Duane, I took my ex to court for contempt for parental alienation. He was found in contempt, but was given full custody of the kids because they were too alienated. I lost my kids. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Oh, yeah, this happens all the time. I've warned people about this. If you're dealing with a high conflict ex, you will eventually lose. If they have a personality disorder, if they have serious mental health issues, they will put the children through what I call the training program. And once they start to hit the teenage years, most of those kids are going to be seduced by the abuser, in the sense of they want to be like that parent, the powerful parent, the parent that's in control, the parent that teaches them, do what I want or I'll hurt you. Not necessarily physically, usually it's emotional and psychological torture. But once you wait to that point, you're doomed. The court unless you can get somebody like Craig Childress to show up in court and explain to the judge that the only way to fix this is to take the kids from the other parent entirely and leave them with you for at least 6 months, unless you get some kind of order like that, you have no hope. And it's sad because a lot of times these kids don't come around until they're well into their 40s. People do not understand what alienation is. Most people think it's just lying to the kids about you. It is much more insidious. It's tantamount to torture. They torture the children into making the decision that they are supposed to make. They have a proverbial gun to their head. We had a big case here. It was a judge that was, her name was District Judge Rena Hughes, and she was dealing with a high conflict case. And what happened was the parent was just alienating the children from the other parent. At least that's what's alleged. I'm going to avoid the caption so that way I can sort of keep this half real and half hypothetical. I want to take advantage of that. Anyway, the judge, after a year of trying to get this mother to understand that the child needed to see the father, she finally gave up and said, that's it, bring the kid into court. I'm going to talk to the kid. And she made the common mistake any average person, any uneducated, ignorant person makes, which is, I just need to explain it to this kid. They're being lied to. So I'm going to tell them the truth. The
judge did that?
Yes, she just did not understand it. Most of them don't get it. They don't understand that the kid is making decisions because they're forced to make those decisions or they will be hurt. So this approach failed in court. She tried to tell the child that she needed to see her father. That didn't work, so she was trying to be forceful. That didn't work, so she tried to threaten the child. So then she ends up in the news. And in the end, the child would not go and see her dad unless it was forced to occur. So there were some court orders that made that happen, and it worked. So anyways, she was subjected to disciplinary proceedings, and then she was convicted by the Commission on Judicial Discipline on a technicality. Now she's in the Supreme Court having to fight this discipline that was imposed on her. If she would have just followed the law, this would have never happened. Because what she could have done was just said, okay, you're not letting the kid see dad, you're losing custody. That's it. It's over. I don't need to talk to this kid. No, dad gets primary physical, you get supervised visits, kid goes there, send the cops, kick in the door, take the child out of the house. That's what works with these types of people. That's what works.
But I think the flip side to it is you have like what Deanne was talking about. I think in that situation, it was one of those things where, and I've heard this before, where the court looks at it and goes, okay, well, yeah, one parent is alienating the kids, but the kids are so far gone that we're just going to give full custody to the alienating parent and we're ignoring everything. I mean, what's a person supposed to do in that situation? If you get caught up in, what was that?
It's too late. You should have thought sooner. You've got to deal with these problems when the child is between 6 and 8, or even earlier if you can. You can't wait till people just don't get it. What they do to the kids is so bad. If you haven't seen the videos from Dr. Craig Childress or Dr. Steve Miller, you have no clue what's going on. It's not just, let's lie to them and then you can change. No, their brain is completely and totally warped.
Right.
The courts don't know what to do when you wait that long. Unless you get a judge who has some serious stones, who says, this kid has definitely been horribly mentally tortured. There is only one solution. You lose everything. You gain everything. You get no time. You get all the time. But very few judges have the stones to do that.
But the problem is, like, taking this situation. Here, let me post this because she put a follow-up comment. It says, my judge does not get it. She took away visitation completely and said that the only way I could visit was for my kids to call me. I had no habits, addictions, nothing wrong with my mothering.
It sounds like teenage discretion right there. I have a video on that. Teenage discretion is abuser's discretion. Your kids have the choice to call you and visit you when they want to. That choice is going to be never.
Nope.
And that's because the controlling parent will make that choice for them. And then they're going to say that that's their choice. And it's really not. But what are you going to do about it now?
Yeah, and people don't understand that the kids are going to side with the parent that they're with at the time just to save the peace.
Yes.
It's either they won't bring it up or they'll gatekeep it. It's like, Johnny's asleep or he's in the bath. You called at the wrong time. He's doing homework, whatever the excuse is. So Shane had a question too. Let me see if I can pull this one up. Shane says, I have 50-50 custody with my MPD ex. She continues to undermine my parenting and to be the quote-unquote fun parent in an effort to get the kids to eventually choose living with her eventually. Any advice?
Yeah, I went through that too. What I said earlier applies here. I knew it was going to be a problem. So when I had the opportunity, I seized the moment and went back to court. So my ex was doing all that stuff too, but she was also not taking him to school, wasn't taking him to appointments, or she would take him to certain appointments and not to the others that were like, for example, she'd take him to like medical stuff, but not dental, and cause his teeth to rot. So what did I do? I took her to court over those things, and then I reduced her custody to visitation, and then I relocated to get away from her. She got worse. She wanted revenge. She got worse. So what did I do? I took more away. What do you do when they get worse? You take more of their rights away.
But see, I think I was gonna say, but I think the difference with you is that, I mean, you methodically, I mean, you kind of put on your combat hat and said, okay, all right, I'm going to play. And you kind of detached your emotions from it. You figured out how the process worked, and you followed the law and you followed the procedures, and you did it that way. And I bet you, had you done it the way most people do it emotionally, you wouldn't have made any progress.
No, none. I would have lost. I would have had nothing right now. He would grow up and be horribly, horribly abused. No, of course, none of that works. Force works. That's the only thing that they understand.
Well, and you have to win.
I tell people, you have to win.
Because if you don't, I mean, if every time you go to court, the toxic narcissistic ex is getting what they believe is a success and not just a crucial beatdown, it's going to embolden them, in my opinion.
It does embolden them. I actually have another video on that. You should pick battles that you can win, because a loss is perceived as a victory to them, and then they get worse. But at the same time, that can also be exploited. So oftentimes they will win in court, and then they'll get really, really crazy. They'll do stuff thinking, oh, well, what are you going to do about it? I won. The judge likes me. So then they do a bunch of crazy stuff. You can take them back to court on that. But the other thing that's important is appeals, because most of the judges just don't understand.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to twist the judge's arm. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you need to severely curtail their parental rights. And most family judges are not comfortable with doing that. Yeah. So there's two choices. You do what the judge wants you to do, or you take that judge's arm and you twist it as hard as you can using statutes, rules, case laws, appeals, everything. You have to protect your kid. If the judge isn't going to protect your kid, then you have to trample over the judge too. Anyone who gets in the way of protecting your kids, you have to beat them. It's sad. Yeah. But what other choice do you have? That's the approach that I took when it came to my ex. And when the judge got in the way of it, that's the approach that I took when it came to the judge. So, judges follow orders too. If a Supreme Court tells them to do something, they'll do what they're told. It's so horrible for me to say. I hate saying these things. But after 8 years, this is what works. It sucks. I hate it.
Well, and I think the point, I mean, and there's a crucial time where you're able to do it. Right. I mean, because let me pop up this comment that John had said, Duane, what age is an age where the kids can be saved? My kids are teenagers and the ex never tells them to call me. She enforces anti-involvement. And I want to touch on that real quick first. Excuse me. And the thing on that is, early in this stage, in my opinion, you kind of have, you have to be play the good cop and the bad cop. If it's happy, fun time over at mom's house or the other parent's house, and you are setting down the law trying to enforce things, you are doomed. You are going to basically, in my opinion, you're going to drive your child into the abuser's arms. You have to find. That's why I often tell people, it's like, if you have to have rules, right? But whenever you set up a punishment or something, make damn sure there's something else you can do. If it's like, okay, you can't play your video games, but we can watch a movie, or we can go throw the ball around, or we can make cookies, or whatever the heck it is, you have to have that balance, because if the child starts to perceive that everything over at one parent's house is just draconian and I'm always being yelled at and I'm never doing anything right, it is going to be a catastrophic mistake for you, at least in my opinion. What's your take on that?
Well, I agree, and this goes to the wisdom of children. I don't understand what it is, but a lot of these parents really put their kids up on this idealistic pedestal that they're going to have the wisdom to understand that they're the victim and that they deserve their affection. No, kids aren't wise. That's not how it works. That's backwards. Kids are kids. And there's a narcissistic phase that all children go through. It's ordinary, it's normal. And so when they have a parent who has narcissistic personality disorder, or they're severely emotional immature, that parent looks like the person who's most understanding, most like them. Parent who lets them do whatever they feel like doing, play games, not care about school. That's the parent that they're going to be drawn to. Children don't have wisdom. They develop it over time, but they don't just start out with it. So what are you expecting? You're right. You have to figure out sort of how to work within the way that they perceive the world.
But I would also add on that, though, is that they do also want structure. I mean, one of the things that I noticed in my situation is when I started to find that balance, and I would hold them accountable and set down a rule. I mean, they would push it, but as soon as it got to the point where they realized, oh, okay, Dad really cares, he's going to hold me accountable, and there's a boundary, and it's like it actually improved it. But you have to do it in a certain way, right? I mean, you can't get angry. You can't be, get your little behind, beep, 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 beep in your room right now, and you're grounded forever, and all that kind of stuff. It's a really tough balancing act that you have to do to make that work. But I agree with you. The kids don't know, and you can't. And I've had that happen myself, where I expect a child, to see the reality of it, and they don't. No kid wants to see their parent as a monster, or as having a mental disorder, or being abusive. They don't want to believe it. Well, unless the abusive person is what was that?
They don't understand any of that. That stuff is so far beyond them. It's a word in the dictionary to them. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, and I agree with you. I'm just looking at some of the other comments. Let me pull up what else John had said. It goes, that happened to me. She won in court for the first 1 and 2 times, then it was all downhill for her and her attorney. Yes, I did get on the judge and the gal and hammered them for being disabled. And John, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember. I get people confused sometimes. I can't remember if he prevailed or whether she just buried herself in court fees. But, it's tough. Yeah, so what do you recommend somebody do? I mean, okay, so if you're in a situation in the early parts of this, and you're starting to see some of this alienation happen, how do you deal with it? I mean, I know what I would say, but what would you say?
The alienation is so hard to prove, but the good thing about it, according to Craig Childress, is the people who alienate their children have severe mental health issues, and that those issues will manifest in other ways that are easier to prove. They could be the type of person who gets with horrible partners, who they get into fights with them, domestic violence is in the home, punching and kicking, throwing stuff. They could be the parent who is always going out and stuff, doesn't care about the kids, they don't take them to school. You're going to have something, a bunch of absences, or you might have horrible grades, or like I mentioned earlier, domestic violence in the home. Right. Things are going to come up. Lack of duty to lack of protective capacity. These are things that the courts do understand. They will take action if they see the kids getting a bunch of Fs, if the parent's not taking them to school. Anytime you try to prove alienation, good luck. They don't know what that is. To them, they're saying bad stuff about you. So
people don't get it.
Them and says, knock it off. Don't say bad things. Yeah. No, that's not what's going on. They're torturing this child psychologically. Now the judge's their eyes glaze over. They don't even know what that is. Yeah. They don't know. The judges think of them as office workers. I don't know, like the ones in Dunder Mifflin from the Office. They go in for a paycheck. They're not like super wise like Gandalf the Grey, the wizard, and they don't know like all. People put them up on these pedestal like they're these like really intense scholars that know they don't know any of that stuff. Watch the interview on Norm Macdonald when Judge Judy calls all the judges in the family division a bunch of, I can't remember the word she used now, morons. That's what she called them. Yeah. Watch that. She was a family judge. Like you guys put these judges up on pedestals. I used to do it too. I stopped after year 4 or 5 when I realized that my judge was okay with my son being picked up at midnight twice a week. I see after a while, you start to see these guys don't know what they're doing. What you have to do as a parent is make it as easy as possible for them to do their job correctly. Rather than
Yeah.
going into work and thinking that all these other people are going to do all this work for you and figure out how to protect your kids, you need to think to yourself, none of these people give a crap about my kids. So what I'm going to do is make their job as easy as I possibly can. Put together a tremendous presentation, get the best legal analysis that you can get, either by hiring an attorney or doing the research yourself. Make their job easy. When your ex goes ballistic, don't feed into it and argue with them on the phone and in emails. Why? Because now you just created another 300 emails for the judge to read.
Yeah.
According to what we're trying to do, we're trying to make their job easier. Why are we creating 300 emails for the judge? Why don't we keep it down to 2? It's like, guys, make their job easy because they don't get it. The solution is not they need to think harder and try harder. That's never going to happen. The job is boring to them. These guys are lawyers. They went to school to learn the law. They're not interested in dealing with petty squabbles between parents. It's boring to them. Some of them will say that they love it, and they'll go on commercials about how they love their job to get elected again. But the truth is, I bet you less than 1% of them really loves their job. I do bet you less.
I mean,
it's
Jesus,
boring.
honestly,
They don't
who in the
care.
hell would want to be a family court judge? I mean, what a horrible thing. I mean, because you're dealing with this crap all day long. You can't. You have a few seconds or maybe a couple of minutes to try to make a quick judgment on which person is more out of control than the other. And I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I would imagine you have to become numb to it, because if you actually were realizing the negative effect of what was happening when you do this, and the lives that are being destroyed, I mean, how would you live with yourself? I mean, I
know
don't
how they do that.
money.
They live with themselves. No, well, the money, the paycheck, and the retirement is good, but they live with themselves by coming to certain conclusions.
Yeah.
So the first conclusion is it's the parents' fault. The parents are ruining their own lives. It's not me. I didn't do it. If there is a bad parent and a good parent, they might tell themselves, well, the good parent shouldn't have had a kid with the bad one. It's blame shifting. It's not their fault. They don't have any way to fix it. There's ways that they can sleep at night. It's not like they toss and turn wondering if they, did the right thing in a case. It's more like, what a bunch of idiots. This family is, what's wrong with them? It's stuff like that. It's like, it's not my fault that these two people don't know how to parent, stuff like that. I hate to say it, but it's everything that you said about deciding to, become a family judge. It's for the most part true.
Deanna made if I'm saying the name right, if I'm not, I apologize. Says, I have made the judge's job easy. It wasn't good enough. Yep. You're right, Alex. Family law judges are not engaged in their jobs and they are bored.
Well, you know what? If the judge doesn't get it, try the Supreme Court. Because that worked for me not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times. The Supreme Court had to tell the judge how to do their job because they didn't know how to do it. 4 times. And I'm not even an attorney.
But the difference on that is you did it on procedure, right? The caveat on that is you just didn't go in and complain and said, well, I don't like this judgment. You figured out the law and were able to say, Section 5, page 3, paragraph 2, you made a mistake right here, right? I mean, that's the difference.
That's the difference, but it works.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to clarify that, because I see so many times, I know you probably do too, you see so many times where people are like, well, this was a bad judgment and I don't like it, so I'm trying to appeal it, but you're not appealing it on any grounds and it gets thrown out. And the reason why you don't get thrown out is because you're chapter and versing or whatever you call it, statute referencing the appropriate law, saying this is where you made a mistake.
Exactly. That's what you have to do. And a lot of times you can't really get to the substantive issues. Most of the appeals are won on procedure and law, but it still gets the message through that judge's skull. This guy got my decision reversed. Now he just did it again. Now I've been reversed twice. Now I look like a moron. Maybe I should pay more attention to this case. And you do. When a non-attorney has your decision overturned, something's wrong with you. Like, come on. Seriously. They get so many breaks. They get breaks on harmless error. They get breaks on findings of fact. And they also have to be told what the statute is.
Well,
so that means
the
non-attorney told you the law and you ignored him.
Oh, yeah. But and then the flip side is all the other attorneys are trying to, make their life a little bit easier. So they're not going to go to war with a judge who they're going to have to deal. After you walk out the door, they're going to spend the rest of the week in front of that judge anyways. I mean, it's sad because we think an attorney would actually say, "No, that's wrong. He made a mistake," and do something about it. but I haven't heard of many that do.
Actually, you're half right. So the attorneys that work in multi-million-dollar areas do
different.
that. Here's the thing: the judges seem to understand it and they don't take it personal. It's a different attitude when it's attorneys that are of that level caliber and the judges who deal with those types of attorneys. The family law attorneys and the family judges are different. It's this like tight-knit little family, and there's all these weird superstitions that float around, and there's these intricate relationships that are all tangled up. That doesn't happen as much with the other areas, personal injury, medical malpractice, punitive damage lawsuits, that kind of stuff. The attorneys go to war with the judges, and the judges don't take it personal. It's just they understand their role. Whereas it seems to me that sometimes the family lawyers and the family judges don't seem to think there's a point to any of it. Like it's like they don't care about the law. Like it doesn't matter to them. Why bother? It gets in the way. It makes us have to do more work. It's a completely different attitude.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Hold on, I'm trying to just check something out here.
The attorneys go to war with the judges.
Sorry about this. I didn't realize you were going to stop.
Don't take it personal. It's just
I'm trying to.
They understand their role.
I can't hit the button. I'm not sure if my chat's working right, so I'm trying to just pull it up. Can you see the chat at all?
I didn't even pop out the chat, so I don't have it. The whole time I haven't had it.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm trying to pop it out myself. Pop out. Jesus, that was harder than I thought it would need it to be. I thought I could do that before you stopped. Sorry about that, guys. So, and I just wanted to clarify, because, when you say Supreme Court, you're talking about the Nevada Supreme Court, right?
Right. The federal Supreme Court hardly ever gets involved in any of this stuff. The state Supreme Courts deal with domestic issues like this.
And see, I think that, and the other thing, because somebody else, Deanna had said, do you suggest going pro se? Well, actually, I can pull this up on the screen. Do you suggest going pro se at the Supreme Court? So what's your recommendation for someone doing that?
I love when I get this question, because it makes me feel like people think I had a choice. Like I chose to go pro se. I didn't have any money, guys.
Yeah.
I had no choice. I had to. Well, I guess there is a choice. You either go pro se or you don't even bother. Like a lot of people have the choice of representing themselves on appeal or doing nothing. Okay, between those two, I say represent yourself on appeal. If you have $100,000 lying around, hire an attorney. But most of us don't have that kind of money. Appeals cost $25,000, $35,000. Trials cost $25,000, $35,000. Discovery costs $15,000 to $25,000. We don't have that kind of money. Yeah. So I get that question so much, guys. I didn't have a choice. I didn't choose. It wasn't like I woke up and I was like, I know how I'm going to beat the system. I'm going to choose not to hire a lawyer. I didn't have a choice. I had no money. Yeah. I had to represent myself, or I could just do nothing and give up. So always I'm going to say the choice between giving up and fighting is fighting, with very limited exceptions, which I actually outlined in a video called Giving Up. So that I do explain, and it's not even fully giving up. It's more of understanding what you have to do, what you have to wait for. So for the most part, generally, my message is to not give up.
Yeah, and I think, and then the flip side to this is, in my mind, is you really have to have a certain mindset or be in a certain spot to be able to represent yourself. Like I know for me, if I wouldn't have had the money to have an attorney, I don't think I would have been able to even represent myself in the original family court case, because I was just too much of an emotional wreck. And if you're in that situation, I think it would be easy for even a mediocre attorney just to tear you apart, because you're going to be making a lot of procedural mistakes, and you're going to be making a lot of regular mistakes. I hope that goes away. I just had something pop up on the screen. I got to figure out how to shut that off. Hey, it went away. Okay, there we go. Anyways, but it's like, I agree with you, right? I mean, it's like if you have the resources, hire the professionals who can help you. But make damn sure that they will help you. I mean, like I know, I don't remember the guy's name, but I think you're doing some live streams with an attorney in Nevada who does do appeals, right? I mean, that is he will go toe to toe on that type of stuff. I can't remember what his name is. Am I right on that or wrong?
That's Alex Gabato. We don't do live streams. I've recorded him and then I edit the footage and put it up. Yeah, he's one of those rare attorneys who files appeals. I really do like that about him. And when I use the word rare, I mean it. Very, very few family law attorneys love appeals. He likes doing them. He loves it. So that's rare, and that's I think one of the pluses with him. But that's all I can say for him with regard. I have to be careful with endorsing attorneys because people when I do that, when it's I don't mind doing it. It's just when I have to really know them really closely, and I've only ever done that for like 2 or 3. I have to be more careful doing that because people will take my endorsement to mean a lot more than it would maybe some random family member or even another attorney.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to his appeals, from what I've looked at, they're amazing. His trial level stuff I haven't seen much of, but the little that I have, he seems articulate, and I've enjoyed interviewing him. But I kind of wandered a little bit there, but yeah, that's his name, Alex Gabato. And
no, and I think, but I mean, the thing is I guess the main point on that is if you're searching for an attorney, you need to do your due diligence to vet them, to get references if you can, to find out what experience they really have. And I would say not even just go by word of mouth. Word of mouth is good. If someone says, hey, Bill Smith is an awesome person and I highly recommend him and this is what he did for me or what they did for me, okay, that's great. But you still need to actually, I think, look into it and see really what you're going to get. And in my opinion, you need to make darn sure that when you go and you talk to them, double check what they're saying, because a lot of these people will tell you exactly what you want to hear. Oh, that's wrong. She can't do that or he can't do that. And we can get you this, this, and this, and this. And they can ask for it, but it doesn't, they may even know that they're full of crap when they're telling you. You just have to be really careful on what you do.
Yeah, most of them, when people give recommendations for lawyers and they're non-lawyers or non-attorneys, usually it's because they won. They don't really understand if that attorney was competent or not. So sometimes a terrible attorney will get lucky, win the case, and then their client is like, oh, this lawyer is the best, and they tell everyone else to hire them. And they wreck all the other cases. And then other times, even more common, people will hire an amazing attorney, but they lose for whatever reason. And then it's like, oh, I'm not going to recommend that person. They lost my hearing or lost my trial. Yeah, and that's very common. The advice from other people, from just a non-attorney, usually that's what it is. They won some particular issue. Who knows if they did a great job or not? So.
No, I hear you on that one. It's just, again, it's about vetting them and doing your due diligence to make sure that it's appropriate. Let me double check and see if we have any other questions. Let's see, trying to scroll down. Again, guys, I'm using a different chunk of software that makes it a little bit different on how I follow comments. So the one nice thing is I can post them on the screen down here somewhere. So that's kind of cool. Can you see those, Alex, when I do that?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. Let's see. If you guys have any other questions, throw them out there. I'll post this comment at least. So John says, to Duane, Alex is right. These judges and attorneys are a close-knit group in family court. They go to all the same Christmas parties, and they are all smiles and kisses on Xmas parties. Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? They're all professional working together, and they're going to have these professional relationships. So, but I like what you were saying that in some areas, they don't take it personally, and they just look at it. It's professional. Like, so if somebody does appeal something, it's not going to be held against them. So
absolutely. It is not. It's a very different relationship in that area, and those judges get appealed so much. They really get thick skin, and they start to adapt. They adapt, and they actually become more competent at their jobs because they get so much feedback from the Supreme Court, and they also understand their role and defer to the knowledge and wisdom of the Supreme Court. Whereas a judge who gets appealed like 2 times a year is going to be like, who's this annoying guy telling me how to do my job? They don't know what they're doing.
Well, and that's what happened with you.
It's a different attitude.
Isn't that what happened with you in the beginning? I thought from what we were talking about before, your judge was getting irritated at you, wasn't he?
He was, but it wasn't appeals exactly. What he was getting irritated at was that I was filing so many documents. So he just assumed he just assumed that since I'm filing a lot of documents, I must be the bad parent. A lot of these family judges believe this ridiculous idea that the less papers that are filed, the happier the family is at home.
Oh,
So it's just the most inane, nonsensical idea that they've come up with. Okay, if you file 10 papers, something is wrong in this house. Somebody is a problem. This kid is suffering. If you file nothing, you guys must be doing great. No, what happened is a bunch of people just gave up. They got tired of getting yelled at. They got tired of getting sanctioned. They got tired of paying attorney fees. So they're not filing anything. But guess what? The child is living a life in misery, probably has horrible grades, teeth rotting out of his skull. They're just not back in court. That's all. So you can't see the problem. Meanwhile, you have over here a protective parent who's filed 15 different motions to get you to try and do your job correctly. That's the bad guy because they're filing too much stuff. That's what I had to go through in my case. I had to deal with vexatious litigant motion. I had to deal with 7 different attempts to sanction me, 2 of which succeeded, 1 of which I got overturned on appeal, and the other one which I got like an 80% discount on. So that's what you put up with. You put up with this kind of incompetence, and they do not understand. And like you asked, in my particular case, they don't understand that just because you're filing a whole lot of papers doesn't mean that you might not actually be the problem. They can't seem to connect these 2 dots together. Now, if you have an attorney, that's different. Apparently, if an attorney is filing 62 different documents, that's okay, because that's a lawyer. I'm like, you get so cynical after a while. Like the way that they think and act, it's almost, it's childish almost.
It's funny you say that, because I remember talking to my attorney, and it's like, this document has to be X amount of pages, shrink it down, right? We're not submitting, we're only submitting a few things, which I also get it too. It goes back to what you were saying before about keeping it simple. I mean, if you submit 60 pages worth of stuff, the likelihood that the judge is going to read it is probably as close to 0 as you possibly can get, right?
Right.
So the other thing I wanted to mention that was a problem in my situation. Well, no, it was a problem. So I didn't get week on, week off. I had this really weird, I still have it, this weird schedule where it's broken up, 2 days with mom, 2 days with me, and then we alternate the weekends. So I was having that problem with a couple of my kids with the bad grades and not the medical issues per se, but getting Fs and not turning homework in. But because of my schedule, there was no way to really document or to show that there was a difference, right? I mean, it was like everything was so freaking intermingled that, well, at least for me, I didn't feel I would be able to go back and say, well, see, I mean, they turn in their homework on Monday, Tuesday, but they don't do it on Wednesday or Thursday, Friday. You know what I mean? It was just a mess. I mean, in retrospect, I wish I would have pushed for week on, a week off, because it would have been a lot better to say, look, this week, all the homework's turned in and all the grades are good. The next week, nothing is turned in and everything has failed. You know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know how I could have, in my situation, been able to demonstrate that effectively to get anyone to even listen to that. On top of the fact that I was out of money, so going back to court wasn't really an option for me back then.
That's another thing that really gets in the way of the high conflict cases. The having to pay the money. It's a financial impossibility for a lot of our families to do that. In my case, I was too poor, had to represent myself, so no problem for me. I could file stuff for free. But I get what you're saying there. And when it comes to those issues where you have a whole lot of evidence to put forth, one of the greatest ways to deal with that is to visualize it. So put together like a chart or a graph or something, reduce it to a page or 2, and then keep the documents separate. And the court can take a look at those if your ex has a problem with them. So if you have aggregate data that's posted and it's genuine, then the court can just go off of that. And if your ex has a problem with some of the data, then they can nitpick it, with you without the judge having to deal with it. And then you can go over the pieces that, they're saying aren't right, and you can correct that, whatever chart or graph you've put together. Or if they want to, they can show it to the judge and get the judge ticked off at him. Well, I didn't do this homework, but it's because of this reason. Okay, well, now you just look inane. So there's a way that you can, there's a certain way. It's, really is a presentation. That's the perfect word. It's coming up with the best way to present the information to a person who really doesn't give 2 craps. And if you can do that in a way that makes it simple for them to do their job, you have a good chance of winning.
That's a really great point. And I mean, and I'm trying to remember, there's a person I was talking with before, I know you worked with them too, where that's what they did. They built a binder with indexes and sections to make it super easy to just like, here you go, here's the information, tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. And that way you get the summary of it. And if you want to, if somebody needs to deep dive into it, they can, but they can, I mean, and I think when you do something like that, it makes you look like you're more organized and at least understand what the hell you're talking about in the first place. Whereas I think a lot of people just come in with a pile of paper and are just, oh, it's somewhere, and they look completely like they're disjoint. Well, they are disjointed, but like they don't even have a good handle on what's going on.
Yeah, a lot of people are, even victims have some narcissistic tendencies, and the attitude is go into court and just talk, and the judge needs to believe me because I'm the victim and I'm suffering.
Oh,
believe me, it's all.
Oh, I lost your audio again.
I'm still here.
Oh, there you go. That's weird. It just dropped out.
What
were you saying?
What I was saying was that the attitude sometimes from the victim is also narcissistic. The victim parent sometimes will think, you need to just believe me because it's because of who I am, what I am saying. Look, I'm looking you in the eye, believe me. And they don't want to go and do all the extra work and put together all of the evidence and format it. They don't, a lot of them don't. They just want to go in and talk. And then they get upset when they're not believed. They're not putting together the best evidence possible, the best presentation possible. And a lot of times they have had losses in the past that they can't let go of. That's one of the things about my case is I lost a whole bunch of times, but I just kept on going. And when I lost, I would often use that against the judge later on. I'd be like, here we are in a motion to show cause. 2 times you denied a motion. So here's the first one where she wasn't following the order. You denied that. Here's the second one where she wasn't following the order. You denied that too. Here we are back a 3rd time. And he held her in contempt. So, you take advantage of your losses to show them, here's me trying to fix this problem. Here's you doing nothing. And here's me back again for the 3rd time. Okay.
If you deny this again and again,
back a 4th time. If you deny this one, I'm coming back a 5th time. If you sanction me, I'm going to appeal it. And that did happen to me. I went back 3 or 4 times, got sanctioned, filed an appeal, won the appeal, filed a motion for costs. She denied that too. Appealed again, won that. Eventually, they start to get it, but they're not that different from other people that we've had to deal with in these situations. Oftentimes, the opponent, the ex, doesn't respond to anything but force, and sadly, oftentimes, neither does the judge.
Yeah, and then it rolls back into the other part you were talking about, to where people just run out of money and they just stop. Which, I mean, and I get it. Sometimes you have to, right? I mean, because if you can't articulate the point good enough to go pro se, then you're probably just going to hurt yourself going, taking yourself back to court. I mean, I mean, that's the same thing for me. I mean, there was a period of time where it just got to the point where it's like, well, I can't fight this. I don't have thousands upon, I mean, I'm broke. I mean, I was financially destroyed. I mean, I was, about ready to start living under my desk at work. Couldn't figure out how to put gas in the car, that type of thing. So I was in no position to give another attorney $3,000. Plus I was in no position emotionally to turn around and go pro se because I was so stressed and so anxious. And I mean, the idea of, taking a nice deep breath, doing all this research myself, not getting completely angry by it, and then being able to go in and articulate a cogent point, for me, it wasn't a reality. I mean, so I ended up doing what a lot of people do. You find your new normal, you make the best of it. I focused on trying to rebuild my relationship with the kids and give them the stability they were looking for. And I stopped everything. I mean, I just couldn't. I mean, the other caveat on this too is I also had my kids who were effectively still, being indoctrinated by their mom. So, I mean, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to court and say that, they should be with me whenever they're like, we want to be with mommy. I mean, it's like, it was a lost or a losing position from the beginning for me, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I think that would have happened in my case too. He never got to the point where he was telling me any of that. He would tell her that he wanted to live with her and stuff. But I only found this out after the fact, long time later. And he was telling her that because if he didn't say that, she'd hurt him.
See, and I'm glad, and I want to just pause for a moment on that one. I really want to hit that. Guys, just because a kid is saying to the other parent that they want to live with them, and to something you got to, and in some respects, you also have to be cautious with you, because they could just be saying it to try to save face or say what they think you want to hear, and you need to be really careful about it. I mean, I don't know how many times that the same thing, I would hear, well, the kids want to live with me, and then they're not saying it to me. I mean, the kids never said to me that I want to live with their mom. But yeah, that's you got to be careful. You got to be careful. I've known a few people who the kids have said, "I want to live with you." They go back to court, and when it gets into court, they recant. They back off and say, "No, I don't. I didn't really mean it. I'd rather live with mommy or whatever." And now you've opened Pandora's box. You've wasted all that money. And typically, since you're there, let's reevaluate child support and everything else. And that's what happened with this friend of mine. He had a low, X amount of money for child support. Went into court because his daughter said she wanted to live with him. They went to court. The daughter changed her mind. And so boom, that's over. That's been dismissed. And since we're here, hey, you owe, an extra $1,000 a month in child support. I mean, it was just one of those things where you're just, you're punished for all the way around.
Yeah. Most of the time when the kids testify, it favors the abuser most of the time. And I don't know why it's so hard for people to understand. Here's the thing. If the abuser is lying about the other parent, they don't have any proof. It's all a bunch of lies. So the only way that they can really create any favorable testimony is to use their child.
Yeah.
You're not drinking, you're not doing drugs, you're not in jail, you're not some kind of criminal. You're doing everything that you're supposed to do to be a good parent. So the other person, all they can do is lie about you. Well, what's the next step up from lying? Getting a witness. And what's the best witness that's at their disposal? The kids, because that's the one that they can control. So usually when a child testifies, it favors the abuser. That's in my opinion. Unless you're dealing with neglectful parents, that's not quite the same thing. Sometimes the child will speak out against a neglectful parent because they're not afraid of that parent hurting them. They can still try to control the child. Usually they use emotional blackmail and try to invoke the child's pity. But I never used my son to testify, not one time. I got everything that I got using my own ability to get witnesses in the courtroom, documentation into the courtroom, and then, of course, filing a whole lot of motions. So I never used my son's testimony, never even asked him, never asked anyone, never asked the court, never crossed my mind as a good idea. Never. The thought of me telling my kid, hey, I need you to come into court to testify makes me sick.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's at a 1. Like, if having my son testify is at a 1, then what's at a 10? Report cards, teachers, mental health experts. That stuff is at
real
10.
evidence, real hard, objective opinion or testimony and evidence.
Yeah.
Because how do you fight that, right? I mean, when you have somebody saying this is what their observations are, and these are, the medical situation or the home or homework situation, all that stuff. I mean, but I tell you, man, it's hard to get people to. I mean, I know you can force it by subpoenaing them, but there's not a lot of people who are like, "Hey, sign me up. I want to stick my toe in the middle of this."
Not a single witness in my case said that. Not one witness wanted to help me.
Yeah.
They responded to the subpoena. What is it? The first 7 words: "You are hereby commanded to appear."
Hey, let me ask you this: how did that affect your relationship with those people?
You have to. I have a video on this called Witnesses, and you have to really portray yourself as the person who has tried to do everything in your power to not have them commanded to appear and testify. So oftentimes, I'll give you an example. I would tell the teacher, hey, I'm going to try and use the, what do they call them? The absence, the things that list all the absences, attendance records.
Attendance record, yeah.
I'm trying to keep you guys out of court, doing everything that I can. I'm going to show the attendance records. And of course, my ex isn't okay with that. That's hearsay evidence. So then I would come back to the teacher. And this is the truth. I would say, you know what? She's saying that the attendance records are not authentic. They're fake. So I'm sorry, but and then the teacher's thinking, you are going to make me come into court saying these records are fake. So now who is the teacher pissed off at?
Oh yeah,
the parent,
no,
the other parent. And it's the truth. If I give you, a list of, if I give you an attendance report and you're going to say that that's fake or that that's not genuine because whatever, you think you're like a legal scholar or your attorney told you to say that or whatever. Okay, well, I'm going to just tell the teacher they have to come to court because you're trying to say this paperwork's fake. So same thing with the dentist. She was saying she said that the dentist said that my son didn't need surgery on his mouth. That was what's it called when it's a elective surgery. It's elective. So I told the dentist, I feel horrible to make you come to court, but my ex is saying that this was all elective surgery. So the dentist is like, what? So now they're pissed off at my ex,
Right.
you know? And so the ex is like, oh, well, no, it's not that. I'm just this or just that. And then the witness is like, are you saying I'm lying or not? You
Yeah.
know, and at some point the witness has to come into court, and she was on the stand. I can't wait to put that video out there. But eventually I'm going to get to that video in my docket series, and I'll put it out there. But anyway, you guys are going to see that the witnesses don't want to be there, but there's a way to present it to a witness to make it
That's a good
clear to
point.
them that it's not you that takes pleasure in doing this. The problem is that the ex is saying they're lying. So all this stuff that you're saying is going on, Mr. Teacher or Mr. Dentist or whatever, they're saying you're a liar. So I'm sorry to have to make you come into court to prove you're not a liar, but that's what they're making me do this.
Yeah.
And you know, they're still not gonna be happy about it. They're not gonna tell you, yay, I'm gonna go, and they probably won't even respond to you. But the day
Right.
will come, the time will come, and they have an order from the court.
Well,
to
they
appear
have
and
to
test.
show up.
Yes,
I want
it's not
to
optional.
post this comment from Lyle. He says, I love what Alex did, but let's face it, he is an extraordinary person to have done what he did. This is not the path we are all able to take. And
I have a series called the Viewers Victory Series. A whole bunch of my viewers are starting to pull it off. I'm up to 5, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more. It's
well,
not just me.
I think it's a double team thing, right? I mean, I think that's why, what I mean is I think that's what's good about both of us, right? I mean, I try to help people deal with the emotional side of it to get themselves calm, and then you arm them up with the procedural stuff to be able to actually follow through with it, right? And if you
Right.
if you don't get your emotions in check, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to do what you've done. You know, I mean, but you are an extraordinary person for being able to pull this off, right? I mean, you didn't give up, you stuck with it, you kept up the fight. I mean, because I'm sure there's a few times you could have said, okay, well, it is what it is. You know, I mean, I can't keep fighting this. But I mean, it's tough though, whenever you still have an opportunity to save your kid, basically. You know, a lot of us, well, not so much me. I was pretty lucky. I got the 50-50 thing, but a lot of people who watch both of us, especially my channel, they've just been hammered by the system, and they're trying to make the best of a crappy situation. So
Right.
it's just tough. But thanks for that, Lyle. Thanks for that comment. I'm trying to see if we're about at an hour, or we're just over an hour, so we probably should shut this down. If there's any other questions that we'd like to hit before we do that, and again, for people who came in late, Alex, if you could just tell everyone where they can find more information about you.
So you can find my website. It's www.theproperperson.com, and that'll connect you to the channel too, because there's the YouTube channel. And then you can find the other website at www.rnevadajudges.com, and that, of course, also has a YouTube channel that it's connected to. So I run the organization Our Nevada Judges, and I also have my separate YouTube channel where I help people represent themselves or even understand what's going on. A lot of people on my channel have attorneys, and they just want to understand what's going on. So,
Well, and I think that's really, I mean, you can have an attorney and you still need to figure things out so you understand what's going on. I mean, I think that's critically important too. I mean, and I'm glad you said that. So even if you have an attorney and you're not planning on going pro se, I would still recommend people check your stuff out, because there's a lot of good information on procedures and stuff. And you really don't want to sit there with your attorney for $200 an hour and have them to try to explain procedural stuff to you, which they don't want to do anyways, but they'll be glad to charge you for it.
yeah.
All right, let me see what else we got going on in the comments, see if anyone else had anything. No, it looks like we're good. So, hey, thanks, Alex, for hanging out. Hey, guys, I'm curious, put in the comments below whether you like this type of thing. This is something that Alex and I have been talking about, maybe doing on a more reoccurring basis. So if you're interested in it, we might be able to make this a semi-recurring thing. You're up for that, right?
Yeah.
Put you on the spot. All right, guys, have an outstanding rest of your day, and both of us will see you on next videos.